What is Welcome back to another episode of the Always Compete Seahawks podcast. My name is Sam. Thank you for joining me today. Today I am joining you a little bit later than usual in order to do my first of my daily for the week free agency day recaps. Day one was a weird day, definitely a little bit slower than a lot of other free agency days. There are still good players on the board when typically like most of like the really good players would be off by this point. A lot of players went off. What I'm going to be doing in this episode is I'm only going to be talking about the Seahawks and division rivals. I will not be talking about the Patriots signing Milton Williams because who really cares? It doesn't really affect us. I'm going to talk about the moves that the Seahawks made, and I'm going to talk about moves that teams in the division made, see who got better, who got worse, who stayed the same. We're going to be breaking it all down, and we will obviously start with the Seahawks. Now, day one was a relief, yet still somehow a little disappointing. The Seahawks entered the day on the heels of the DK Metcalf trade, the Geno Smith trade that opened up a ton of money, and the team was sitting with about the fifth most cap space in the NFL. And the widely expected move that got a little scary towards the end ended up happening. Sam Darnold does sign with the Seahawks to be their new quarterback for the time being. The contract is for 3 years, $100.5 million dollars with 55 million guaranteed. However, as many people have pointed out, with these kinds of deals, you can typically evaluate either their entire scope, which is a 3 year 100, or you could look at it through the lens of a 2 year deal worth 55, which is the amount of guarantees, which would either way, with the 3 year value, you're talking about 33 million per year. And with the 2 year deal, you're talking about 27.5 million per year. So overall, for this team, I think they got great value on Darnold. I don't think Darnold is the guy who is going to be the face of the franchise. He's not going to be your franchise quarterback. He's not going to be elite. He's not getting paid like he's elite. But all in all, for a 27-year-old coming off a career year, I am happy that the Seahawks got a quarterback who I think most people would agree is above average, and and got him for a reasonable price. They ended up getting him pretty much at that amount of money that I said I would like them to do. If you can get Sam Darnold, get younger, and get him for about $10 million cheaper than what Geno's going to get, that's pretty much what they got. I see Geno probably making somewhere in the low 40s, like 43 million. And in that case, you got about $10 million cheaper than Geno. So in that case, I think this deal works out fairly well. I think Darnold was the best option on the board. I still think the best option for this team is pick Darnold and draft a quarterback, whether that's in the second round or in the third, or whether you want to take a flyer on a guy in the fourth or the fifth. You have to get someone young for this quarterback room to hopefully try to build around, let develop behind Darnold, at least for the next couple of years. This deal essentially seems like it's a lock that Darnold will be here for the next 2 years. If he does well, you can maybe talk about an extension. If he doesn't, or you have a quarterback that you really want, you can cut bait after 2 years. So, all in all, I feel like this deal really does work for both sides. I think Darnold kind of went where he wanted to go. The familiarity with a lot of the coaches on the staff, his kind of the closeness to home for Darnold, kind of being from California, being from the West Coast, all very important for him. So overall, I'm happy that both sides got this done. It was kind of the blockbuster move of the day, and ultimately, I think the value for Seattle is really good here, considering what it could have been. Where some people yesterday were saying that the deal could fall from like a 3 year 120 million, which would be a lot more money, obviously, and would have totally changed the dynamic of what the Seahawks could have paid. That was the only blockbuster move that the Seahawks made today. That doesn't necessarily mean that they missed out on guards. Aaron Banks, the 49ers guard, who I thought could be a target for the Seahawks given his connection to Kubiak. I didn't really like him, but I thought he could be an option. He signed a colossal deal with the Green Bay Packers. He's going to be making 19 million per year on average, which is just unbelievable because frankly, He's at best an above a slightly above average guard, and he got a ton of money. But then we're also about Drew Dolman, taking a pretty small contract, all things considered, to go to Chicago. I think when you see a contract that small, Dolman was a guy who was speculated could get $20 million a year. Ends up settling for about 14 a year. I think when you look at it in that case, you're probably talking about realistically, you're talking about a guy who was going to go to Chicago no matter what. It's really that simple. But the fact remains the Seahawks are still looking at Mekhi Becton. They're still looking at Will Fries, who seems to be their primary target. Minnesota also seems to be the team that's really going strong on Fries. Minnesota spent a lot of money today, and they spent money on Ryan Kelly, a guy who I thought could be a Seahawks target. They spent money on Isaiah Rodgers, on Byron Murphy. So ultimately, maybe Fries kind of maybe outprices from what Minnesota would want, but ultimately I think that's going to come down probably to tomorrow. But Fries is said to have a very live market with the Seahawks very much in the middle of it. Brady Henderson especially has been consistently saying that the Seahawks really see him as the number one target this offseason, see him as the best fit on this offensive line. And some other reports from especially from like I believe Brock Ward who said the Seahawks didn't really even want to get in on Drew Dalman. So really? If the Seahawks have someone that they like, that's who they're going to get. And that's who they're going to especially try really hard to get. And I think they're going to have to overpay to get some of these guys, especially seeing what Aaron Banks got from the Packers, which was just really jaw-dropping to me. I did not expect him to get that much money for the quality of player that he is. I think Mekhi Becton's a better guard than him. I think when healthy, Tevin Jenkins and Will Fries are better guards than him. James Daniels, who got a much smaller contract, I think when healthy is a better guard than Aaron Banks. It, it- I am kind of nervous on what the guard market could look like, but overall, I think John really wants Will Fries, and John is known to have fallback plans when things don't work. He wanted Zach Allen. When they didn't get Zach Allen, he fell back to Draymond Jones. So you have to wonder if they view Tevin Jenkins or Mekhi Becton as that fallback. Ultimately, I would expect it to be Jenkins. I think Jenkins probably fits the scheme a bit better, and he might come in at a significantly lower cost given the injuries that he has sustained. However, when he's on the field, he's a pretty good football player, and that's something that can't be understated. Now, it's not to say the Seahawks did not make any additions on the offensive line. They did add Josh Jones, the former Cardinals and Ravens tackle, on a 1 year deal, kind of swing tackle, can play a little bit of guard in there. Ultimately, this is a depth move. I believe the contract is like max worth up to $5 million. This is probably based on a ton of incentives on if he gets playing time. Realistically, this is insurance for Abe Lucas, who frankly you can never be sure if he's ever gonna play. He's still kind of, even though he did finish out the year last year, still very much in limbo, recovering from that knee injury, recovering from knee surgery. Ultimately, would not uh, put it past them to invest in a swing tackle like they want, like they tried to with George Fant, even though obviously did not work out. This guy Josh Jones realistically is kind of the George Fant slash Stone Forsythe replacement for this team. Just kind of a depth tackle with some versatility along the offensive line at the end of the day. Now, let's talk about that's it for the Seahawks, really. Hoping tomorrow we will get some talk on guards. No real word on them going after wide receivers, which I'm not surprised about. But regardless, I thought maybe John Schneider seems to like his wide receivers. Maybe he would go out and kind of invest in a guy like Darius Slayton or someone like that. But ultimately, I'm happy that they didn't. We'll see how this obviously ages tomorrow. There are still guys that they could overpay for on the open market. But really, there was a lot of movement in the NFC West today. Arizona made a big move going out and getting Josh Sweat from the Eagles, 4 years, 76, I believe is the contract, 19 million a year. Ultimately, a move that I think is not very good. I think the Cardinals paid premium money for a edge rusher who's pretty decent. I think his counting stats are inflated when you consider just how good that defensive line he was on was. with Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and Brandon Graham and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams, who got a huge bag from the Patriots, got more than Sam Darnold as a defensive tackle, which says a lot. But the Cardinals spent a lot of money on Josh Sweat, and I don't think he's the type of player that you pin your defense on. He's a good, not, he's a pretty good, not great, not elite player that they paid a lot of money for. And we've seen it before where guys who are number twos, sometimes you ask them to be number ones and they don't stand well. So we will see how this evolves with Josh Sweat, even if I do believe Sweat is a good player. They paid a premium price to go out and get him. As for the Rams, they went out and yesterday, I didn't really mention this, went out and added Devontae Adams, which was a significant enough move. It also came out that the Rams will likely release Cooper Kupp on Wednesday. But the real move that really hurt me, if you know my backstory, my old Twitter account handle name was Puna Stan. I love Puna Ford. He's one of my favorite players for the Seahawks. Puna signed with the Rams on a 3-year deal worth 30 million. Great signing for the Rams, a guy who I thought Seattle could go after, but ultimately Brady Henderson said in a report that the Seahawks saw Puna Ford as a kind of option B if they did not re-sign Jaron Reed. As we know, they did go out and re-sign Jaron Reed, so ultimately Puna Ford was never really in the cards for them. However, like that move a lot for the Rams, especially on a day where they lose Michael Hoyt, they lose Bobby Brown, they lost some names on that defense. I think all in all, getting Puna Ford is a good piece. Bobby Brown and Puna could not be more physically different, with Bobby Brown being like a 6'6" beast and Puna Ford being like a 5'10" kind of stubby little guy. But ultimately, I think Puna Ford's probably the better player easily. And while maybe he doesn't have as much upside, I think his floor is much higher than what Bobby Brown gives. I think ultimately the Rams are leaving today feel like they probably improved, all things considered. Now, as far as the 49ers go, they had a really rough day, in my opinion. They lose Aaron Banks, they lose Jalen Moore, they are releasing Kyle Juszczyk. They have already lost Debo Samuel, and then they also, on the defensive side of the ball, lost Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga, both to the Denver Broncos on multi-year deals. Two really key pieces of that defense that, even though they haven't really been healthy the last couple of years, they are serious game changers when they are healthy, and that 49ers defense is feeling much weaker than it was earlier in the day. I think really we're seeing San Francisco in the market for guys like Joey Bosa, and what we're really seeing now is the 49ers are cash strapped, and they're about to pay a pretty good quarter, a pretty decent, pretty solid, I would call him a good quarterback. I think at their peaks, Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold are pretty equivalent at their peaks. I think Darnold's floor is much lower than Purdy's, but when they're both playing as good as they can, like we saw with Sam Darnold last year, when he's playing as good as he can, he might be even better than Brock Purdy. So they're about to pay him really, really expensive, big time money to be a good quarterback. And they are already cash strapped. They are shopping Brandon Ayuk. You don't really know if in the next couple of years if George Kittle could hit a potential trade market. There will be a lot of guys that could get moved, and the 49ers are kind of having to let their really good players, young players, walk in exchange for kind of going after the veteran, washed up, big name, but kind of no talent at this point in their career players. San Francisco, their window is closing extremely quickly, and that is an objective fact. And I'm not saying that as a Seahawks fan who objectively hates the 49ers. I'm saying that just statistically and analytically, they're losing great young players and being forced to replace them with really aging, declining players. And that's a problem. It's a big problem for them. It's a big problem for the team. And ultimately, it's something that I can't really see them winning a Super Bowl with, especially because for Brock Purdy to be able to win a Super Bowl, you have to build what is essentially a super team around him. And what the 49ers have right now is not close enough to, not even remotely close enough to a super team to really be considered a contender. I still think the Rams are leaving as the favorite. I still think San Francisco, top to bottom, probably has a better team than Seattle. But if you told me that the Seahawks went out and added Will Fries and picked well and added a couple receivers, I think there's a plausible argument to be made that Seattle is definitively better than San Francisco going into week one. So ultimately, a lot of moves in the NFC West. The Seahawks go out, get their quarterback for the now at least, and then we'll see what happens in the draft. Give me your thoughts in the comments below. What do you guys want to see tomorrow? How do you feel about the Sam Darnold move? And how are you feeling about this team moving forward? I want to thank you guys for watching. Sorry for coming in really late. For me on the East Coast, it's currently 11:43, and I just got home from work and I am exhausted. So I'm going to go to bed, which is right there. But I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Give me your thoughts in the comments below. Enjoy your day. I will see you tomorrow for my day two recap. I want to thank you guys for watching. Enjoy your night. Peace out.